Hello, welcome to Municon 2021. I'm Jane Dool with the Port of Seattle and will be moderating for Regional Spill Hotline Feasibility Study by Todd Hunsdorfer with King County and Rebecca Dugopolski and Jenn Schmidt with Herrera Environmental Consultants. Please type your questions into the chat box. They will be answered following the presentation. Todd.
Thanks, Jane. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for tuning into the presentation this morning. We're excited to share the results of the study with everybody. And before we get started, I just want to say this is a SAM-funded study. Stormwater Action Monitoring. SAM is a collaborative stormwater monitoring program in Western Washington, funded by more than 90 Phase 1 and Phase 2 municipal stormwater permittees and administered by the Washington Department of Ecology. SAM studies measure effectiveness of stormwater management efforts and communicate that information for adaptive management of stormwater regionally. This project was a SAM-funded study, and information is available on the SAM website at www.ecology.wa.gov/SAM. You can see the link there at the bottom of the slide. So, quick overview. Many of you on the call I recognize, and you'll know with the issuance of the municipal permits, we took a huge step towards cleaner water, but that regulatory framework kind of resulted in this disparate, balkanized management of stormwater and across jurisdictions, with each jurisdiction responsible for managing stormwater within their boundaries. This applied to all the programming, like education outreach, development and redevelopment, and also illicit discharge detection and elimination, including a requirement to publicize a spill hotline. So the study was designed to understand whether it would be feasible to institute a regional spill hotline that could eliminate confusion related to reporting spills and illicit discharges. On the next slide, I have some acknowledgements, and I wanted to thank everyone who participated in helping to gather this important information. I know you put in a lot of time responding to survey questions and interviews, and it was very much appreciated. I also want to thank the Technical Advisory Committee for their review work as well. So what do we mean when we say regional spill hotline? There's a few bullets here. We're talking about a system that allows for reporting spills or other environmental concerns. And specifically this third bullet point here related to collaboration and multi-jurisdictional use. So the goals of the project here, I'm zipping through this because the meaty stuff, the really interesting stuff is coming up here from Rebecca and Jenn, and I just want to highlight the quick goals of the project here, gathering information to assess the feasibility and also recommending workflows that match feasibility and valued criteria. So bear that in mind as we move through the results of the research, and I'll pass it over to Rebecca.
All right, thanks, Todd. So this is just a brief overview of the three main tasks that we had in the project. So starting off on the left with municipal state agency research, then shifting into system research and the data analysis in the final report. So I'll be walking through this first portion here, and then I'll hand things off to Jenn to walk us through the second two tasks. So here I just wanted to point out we'll be walking through each one of these, but a SurveyMonkey survey, municipal interviews, state agency interviews, technical interviews, and all of that's kind of compiled into an interview summary report. That's included as an appendix in the final report. I did post those along with the files for this presentation on FeedLoop if you want to take a look at that, or we have a link on the very last slide that'll direct you towards the portion of the SAM website where you can find the project deliverables as well. So starting off with the initial survey, we had a 10-question SurveyMonkey survey that was sent out 2 years ago in April 2019, along with this FAQ document you have here on the right side of the screen, talking about some of those key questions that Todd mentioned. What is a regional spill hotline? What are the goals of this study, et cetera, just to get everyone on the same page with where we were coming from. We had a great response. We received 89 total responses representing multiple cities and counties in Western Washington, a handful of Eastern Washington cities and counties, and also a couple of state agencies, including WashDOT and Washington Department of Health. And you can see on this map here, all those yellow dots are jurisdictions that we heard back from, cities that we heard back from, and the counties in that light blue color are the counties that we heard back from as well. So we thought that was a great initial response and really gave us the feel kind of statewide of what some of the initial thoughts were on a regional spill hotline. So I'm just going to run through a few of the questions that are in there. As I mentioned, the detailed results are included in that appendix to the final report if you want to take a look at that. This question here looked at the ranked benefits of a regional spill hotline. So from most important to least important here, I've got these ordered. So we had about 79 to 83 responses here. And the most important benefits that people saw were improved public reporting of spills, standardized response reporting data collection and staff training, and improved response time to spills. So those were kind of the top three. And then the lowest one on the list was fewer notifications going through ERTs. So that really didn't seem to be a key concern out of those that filled out that initial survey. We also asked about minimum information needed. So looking at moving forward into what type of information we'd be collecting through that spill hotline, we asked what type of information folks would want to know. And you could select multiple responses for this. So this is looking at the top 5 responses. I thought this was interesting. Everyone except for one person said they wanted to know the location. So I'm not sure how that one person is going to find the spill, but it's good to know that everyone wanted to know location. Then moving to type of material, approximate spill size, quantity, source of spill, and contact information. Those were the top 5. Some of the other responses not listed on the slide include responsible party if known, whether or not the spill has entered the municipal separate storm sewer system, whether or not the spill has entered a receiving water, other, and then photos. So there are some other options filled in there as well. Next, we took a look at the preferred interface. So the key preferred interface here, most folks responded that they wanted a phone hotline with an actual person answering the phone. So that was 80% of our respondents. So there was a total here, you could select more than one. So a lot of folks also said website. Mobile application was next on the list. And then other was kind of interesting because it was kind of a combination of these. So even though you could select more than one, people wanted to fill in some more information in others. So some of the responses we got there talked about all 3 would be great, or had some clarifying text regarding the type of mobile application or things like that. So if we really wanted to divvy that up, I think we'd be a little bit higher in terms of each of these categories. But interesting to see that kind of all 3 of those were preferred interfaces, but the phone hotline ranked the highest. We also looked at the rank scale of coverage of a regional spill hotline, and I thought the responses to this were pretty interesting because originally we're kind of leaning towards maybe this is a Puget Sound, Western Washington, or even a statewide hotline. But as the responses came in, we found that ranked from most important to least important here, most jurisdictions that filled out the survey thought that county or multi-county or even watershed were a higher priority than having kind of a Puget Sound or Western Washington wide hotline. So that was kind of an interesting result that we got from that initial survey. In terms of primary concerns, this was another one that we had, just taking a look at what are some of the potential barriers that could be to implementing a regional spill hotline. So the top concerns here were another phone number means more potential for confusion, unknown costs compared to current illicit discharge hotline, or insufficient information for local illicit discharge response. Also potentially creating extra work at the local jurisdiction level. So you could select up to 3 concerns. And then there were some other concerns as well, including local illicit discharge responders are still needed, documentation reporting still required, etc. Shifting next into the interviews, we worked with Hardwick Research, Nancy Hardwick at Hardwick Research on this. So we put together an interview guide and reached out to 10 different municipalities. We looked at 3 phase 1 jurisdictions, Seattle, Pierce County, and King County. And we have 5 phase 2 cities and counties that participated, including City of Bellevue, City of Kirkland, City of Redmond, Kitsap County, and Skagit County. We had 1 city in Southwest Washington, a phase 2 city, the City of Battleground. And we had 1 city in Eastern Washington, City of Kennewick, that participated as well. And then after we went through the results of that, we found we should also reach out to some state agencies. So we took a look at Department of Health, Washington State Department of Transportation, and Department of Ecology as well. So through those interviews, we looked at concerns and preferences from those municipalities and state agencies. We also looked at recommendations for a regional spill hotline system, including funding, system efficiency, accessibility and equity, and investment in individual jurisdiction spill systems. So kind of looking at the overall, getting a little more detailed than that initial SurveyMonkey did. And then you can find those detailed results, as I mentioned, in the appendices to the final report. We also had 4 technical interviews conducted by Herrera, and those covered 5 active reporting systems. They included technical questions for existing applications and systems. So looking at here, we had Kitsap 1 and C-Click Fix operated by Kitsap County, Spill Response Program operated by Seattle Public Utilities. We looked at the Squeal on Pigs Feral Swine campaign operated by the Washington Recreation and Conservation Office, and the Washington Invasives app also operated by the Washington Recreation and Conservation Office. And of course, the Environmental Report Tracking System, or ERTS, operated by Ecology. So through those interviews, we looked at successes and challenges and also operational considerations to those different systems that were implemented. So as you heard from that list, some are focused on spills and some are not, but since we were looking at kind of the data management system and how that worked, we decided to look a little broader than just spill hotlines. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Jenn to walk us through the system research portion of the project and some of the technical details behind our recommendations.
Thanks, Rebecca. As Rebecca said, I'm going to discuss the research process that we went through to assess the potential systems that could meet the requirements that we gathered through the surveys and interviews that Rebecca just went over. Next slide. So we used the information compiled from the interviews to identify key functionality categories with features that a system would need to have to meet the requirements gathered through the interviewing and surveying process. As Rebecca mentioned, both the full and the condensed versions of this matrix are included in the sessions file link for this presentation. So I'd encourage folks, if you have detailed questions, to take a look at that, because there really is a wealth of information there. What the matrix summarizes is that, so there's information on feature priorities, and then for each assessed system, whether the requirement that we're looking at is fully met, partially met, or not met at all. And what this does is gives us a summarized way to compare categories of systems and individual systems to each other. So one benefit of this matrix is that even if a system, a regional system is not preferred, spoiler alert for further in the presentation, this matrix does provide a lot of information that might be useful to individual jurisdictions looking to implement their own system. Okay, next slide. So what about ERTS? That's the question that continually comes up. So currently, based on the research we did, we saw that currently many municipalities interpret and use ERTS for regional spill reporting purposes. However, Ecology didn't intend for ERTS to function as a regional spill reporting system. ERTS is not limited to spill reporting and will continue operating regardless of the decision to implement a regional spill reporting system or not. One recommendation that we included in our final report was for Ecology to consider clarifying the function and limitations of ERTS on their website. Also, a regional spill system, if it were implemented, it could be designed in a way to configure reporting for ERTS compatibility or other statewide systems. Next, I'm going to talk about the analysis and recommendations phase of this effort. My dogs are going to have something to say about that in the background. I apologize. So for key research findings, there are a number of findings that we want to highlight from this effort. The first one is that our research, I'm getting a package delivered. Sorry, everyone. So our research did not find broad support for regional spill hotline. However, skipping down a few bullets, the implementation of a multi-jurisdiction regional spill reporting system is feasible. So not preferred, but feasible. As we said previously, the municipalities interpret and use ERTS for regional spill purposes, but that's not how Ecology intended for it to be used. And the implementation of a regional spill system could be used to streamline existing reporting and local response procedures. So what this slide is showing is a graphic of what a centralized regional spill reporting system might look like. So kind of starting with on the left-hand side, we have community member who wants to report a spill from jurisdiction A, and they have two options for reporting that information. So one would be via a centralized web form, which would be one public-facing, mobile-compatible, map-based web form that would allow for consistent reporting. Option two would be via a central call center. A central hotline number, as Rebecca mentioned, was one of the top recommendations from folks in the survey. It's also an important component for equity. A central hotline addresses spill reporting accessibility, which is important for those without a mobile device or internet connection. So the information is submitted through the web form or via call center. And then that data is stored in a centralized database with configured user permissions. This common database stores regional spill information with local permissions for access and editing. And this will allow for easy data sharing when needed, either between jurisdictions or for streamlined reporting to ecology. This is then an auto notification is generated to alert jurisdiction A. This provides them with the information to get spill responders out on the ground. And then a really important component of this is this feedback loop of if the information goes back up to the central data cloud data storage interface and is reported back to the person who reported the spill. Some benefits of a centralized system. So one is to standardize on data collection forms, allow for consistent information to be collected each time. This avoids redundant program sprawl. This allows jurisdictions to communicate and coordinate with ease. It allows for anonymous public spill reporting, long-term tracking, and analytical capabilities of information tracked between jurisdiction. Efficient geodynamic automation, and what we mean by that is that by having a system that has location information enabled, you're able to more efficiently route folks in an automated way to where a spill has occurred. And this can also help with automating permit requirement workflows. So one recommendation that we had for this was to create or identify a primary coordinating entity for managing the system. So this would be to help facilitate spill system funding and management. And examples of this include the Northwest Clean Air Agency that responds to complaints in Island, Skagit, and Whatcom counties, as well as the RCO Squeal on Pigs and Washington Invasives app managed by RCO. So we're recommending that an entity is formed specifically for managing the system if it were to be implemented. Again, we touched a little bit on cross-jurisdiction coordination. So a single web form could be submitted from any jurisdiction. Centralized data would allow multiple jurisdictions to simultaneously access and update spill report data, and a map-driven and automated workflow helps to streamline rapid spill response and reporting. So we want to encourage two-way communication when possible, but this system will also allow for anonymous reporting if needed. That's all I will say on that slide. And this slide shows how a regional spill hotline might integrate with ERTS or another statewide reporting system. So starting on the left, web form report details are compatible with ERTS. The system would be designed in a way where that would be the case. So jurisdiction A could confirm their spill report details, and this would auto-generate a report from the spill reporting system in an ERTS compatible format. This could then be reviewed by the ERTS coordinator and redistributed as needed. And the ERTS coordinator could also then connect back with jurisdiction A for additional information if needed. And we have a note here that this recommendation is based on the findings from the survey and the interviews, but this study does not have any influence on modifications to or the future operations of ERTS.
All right, thanks, Jen. So I'm going to just wrap up by providing some potential next steps. As Jen mentioned, as we found through the process for this, we found that, the regional spill hotline was not the preferred option necessarily, but we still wanted to cover some potential next steps because through this process, we did find a lot of options that seemed to be feasible and could be beneficial for the broader community. So some potential next steps could include conducting a follow-up survey of jurisdictions with this information that we now know through this project that presents the vendor capabilities and spill report feasibility, and see if that changes any opinions that were felt initially a couple of years ago. Also forming a preliminary centralized entity if we decided to move forward with the regional spill hotline that would help with that interjurisdictional coordination, and also cost variable evaluation. I know that was a key concern that came out, how much would this cost each jurisdiction participating, so we could get some more information on that through that process. Also considering local or sub-regional implementation strategies, as we found through the initial survey, having things at a regional, kind of a smaller regional scale, so kind of the county-wide scale or multi-county scale was preferred rather than more of the Puget Sound-wide or Western Washington-wide. So looking at some of those local or sub-regional implementation strategies to see if that would benefit some jurisdictions in those areas. Also surveying the public, we found that was kind of a gap through our process, is that we were looking at municipalities and state agencies, but we weren't really looking to the public and what would help them report spills more easily. So spill report accessibility from the public. And then also consider public outreach. This is something that came up a lot as well. So looking at how this information gets sent out to the public and whether they're aware of these spill hotlines and what they should be looking for in reporting. So just some ideas in terms of next steps if we were to move to the next phase with this study. All right, and that kind of wraps up our presentation. I have here the detailed link. We had that kind of rolled up link on the main slide. If you just go to Ecology's main SAM page, you can find our study, but here's the detailed link that'll point you towards the project deliverables and contact information here for Todd and Jen and I. And we're happy to take any questions at this time.
Thanks so much. There is a question, Jordan Seagal. How could private spill response companies be incorporated into this program? These companies have dedicated staff and equipment that may be needed during large storm events.
Good question. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I could maybe speak to that a little bit. This, as I mentioned at the very beginning, this was a SAM-funded study, so we were looking, we're obligated to look at how the municipalities and permittees that pay into the SAM funds may benefit from this additional knowledge. So we weren't really considering the incorporation of private spill response companies. Although I will say through Jen's portion of her research in terms of feasibility, it would be possible to create a kind of a hybrid network of entities that could effectively respond as quickly as possible, but that adds some additional complications, obviously. So that's kind of the best answer I have to that question. I don't know if others have anything they want to add.
Yeah, I'm also thinking, depending on the jurisdiction's preference, if they didn't have enough staff that were able to respond, or maybe a certain size of spill, you could probably add those filters into the database. So,
Yeah.
For jurisdiction B, they don't have their own spill responders, so the calls would automatically go to this, preferred list of vendors, or a certain size spill where you need all hands on deck. That might be something where you could work that into the process to get the spill responders out there a little bit faster.
Time of day and
yeah.
day of week will also matter too. So there's definite opportunity for that type of integration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question.
Well, I have a question since I don't see anything else yet. One of the challenges, and maybe this is something for the next list, is training of the staff that take the calls. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if that's just something that would be researched further, or if it's something that was considered all during this study.
Yeah, we didn't really look into training specifically, but that's something that is important. And I don't know that there's a lot of resources out there currently for those when those calls come in. So that's an important thing to consider, Jane. And we didn't look at it as part of this project, but that, in addition to public education, that's a critical piece of this to make sure the correct information is collected, so the spill responders have enough information that they can then go out and respond to the spill with the best set of information.
Yeah, one of the obstacles we were looking at was this idea of accurate routing of the spill report. So all have also experienced is the routing of an incident to them that may not be within their jurisdiction. So I think I lost my audio.
I was gonna say, yeah, you froze a little bit, but yeah, I think we got most of it.
So now I'm wearing a headset over my other headset. So what I was saying was I think many of us probably on this call have experienced the inaccurate routing of a report to us in a jurisdiction where maybe it's not applicable. And so related to the staff training at a call center, it's understood that would be a critical piece of how the whole system would function, because avoiding that type of obstacle or challenge is sort of paramount to making it work well.
Great, thanks. There's another about 4 minutes for our audience to weigh in and ask some questions about this study. Were there any observations you wanted to share from your study that you felt were interesting as far as future work? From the three of you?
I can chime in here. Yeah, the conversation around a regional spill hotline has been one that has been going on for more than a decade now. And it's unfortunate that we didn't get a jump on this research much sooner. I think, that's really one of the biggest findings was many entities are so entrenched in the systems that they have in place that the possibility of instituting sort of a regional cooperative system is much more challenging now than it would have been 10 years ago. And the research that Jenn did and the findings from the surveys are still very helpful for jurisdictions that are considering transitioning their spill reporting system to like a cloud-based program. I would encourage folks to check out the attachments. There's a lot of really wonderful information there that's probably time sensitive. Many of these programs and platforms, they're changing at such a rapid speed that the research we've done today may not be as relevant in a year or two from now. So if you're currently looking at exploring a platform for this type of activity, I would encourage you to take a look at that research. And and so that's one of the findings I'll just plug. There's still very much a functional use of the research that was done, and that's really nice for us to know, even though there may not be a regional desire for a spill hotline.
Yeah, here's a comment. Oh, they're coming in now. We only have a minute left. Mark thinks it's a neat idea. It might even facilitate cross-jurisdictional resource sharing. Example, jurisdiction could loan a specialized sweeper to their neighbor. That's a great opportunity and very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Blaine says, I like the idea. How would this kind of regional system affect response times? Currently, if you get a call during work hours, we can take response 5 to 15 minutes with a crew and Vector truck.
Yeah, we weren't necessarily anticipating a lag in response times because it's still kind of the calls coming in through the centralized system. So it's just hopefully getting the right reports to you faster. So even though there's that extra step there, it comes to your spill responders pretty quickly. So it's just routing to the appropriate place, because we found in some jurisdictions, they might be getting calls that aren't necessarily meant for their jurisdiction. So you'd be getting just the calls that are meant for your jurisdiction. And I don't think it would impact the response time by much. So that should still, as long as your spill responders are able to get out there that fast, it shouldn't make much of a difference there.
Great. Well, I think we're just about ready to wrap up. Is that right, Dre? It looks like there aren't any more questions in the chat, but thank you so much. This has been really interesting. And I'm, for one, I'm going to go look up your study.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.